Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
For more than 2 decades, Huma Abedin has been, as they describe, a gatekeeper to one of the most famous women in the world, Hillary Clinton. And Huma was formerly married to Congressman Anthony Weiner, and most people know the story about that. Here's a woman who has been in the public a lot, but really been fairly quiet. A new memoir, Both and A Life in Many Worlds, tells this extraordinary story. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So please join me straight ahead for Huma Abedin, Both and.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
Happy big game day. Yeah, it is the biggest game of the season. And if you're at home watching, there aren't a lot of breaks because we love the commercials. But in between, if you haven't really done a lot of Valentine stuff, you can make something yummy. I'm going to tell you how to do it. And it's very easy. This I found out about from my friend Linda, whose teenage family loves this. Ghirardelli, you know, the great chocolate people, available in every market. They have a brownie mix. Now, I'm not a mix person. I do like to bake, and I very rarely, if ever, use a mix. But everyone's been telling me, including her family, about the Ghirardelli triple chocolate premium brownie mix. That's the one you want to buy. Everyone who's had it said better than homemade. So, hey, takes just a few minutes. You can't go wrong with it. You buy it at the grocer. It's about $3 a box, or Costco, where they have a life size. It has 6 brownie mix pouches for even left. They're all gooey in the middle and rich. You've got the secret is not only the quality ingredients that are in it with the good Ghirardelli chocolate, but it's undercooking it. And you can add nuts or whatever you want. We use an 8x8 or 9x9 pan for the brownies, and you can cut them to 9 or 16 pieces. The mix has all the dry ingredients. All we had to add was 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, water, and 1 egg, and the egg should be at room temperature. You bake for about 30-35 minutes, depending upon the size of the pan and how hot your oven gets. The box tells you to cook it a little more. We don't pay attention to that. We do the 30 to 35 minutes. Undercooking, just a tad, makes them better. And you can add nuts or marshmallow, chocolate chips, even those good peanut candies, the M&Ms, and we like that. Of course I like it. It's chocolate, and this is really good. So I'll give you one more quick that my friend Lisa, we all shared, a wonderful artistic guy, Sandy Gallen, and he passed away, but he had the best parties and the best food, and he made a chocolate cake that everyone loved. And I'll tell you real fast, you preheat the oven to 350. Line a 9-inch buttered pan with parchment paper, and then melt 2 sticks of butter and 12 ounces of bittersweet chocolate in a double boiler. Beat 6 eggs with 1 cup of sugar, and then combine with the chocolate. That's it. Bake in the pan that you're putting in a water bath. You know, I take a low roasting pan, fill it with water, and you're not going to drown your cake. You're just going to let it cook in that pan for about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe 1 hour. And it depends on the oven. And you can use a thermometer if you want, but I stick something in and just see. Sometimes it's ready after 45 minutes. It's a delicious cake, and it's got nothing. It's got 6 eggs. That's the deal. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day, one and all. Happy big game day. You can make it for the game, too. Enjoy it all. And stay tuned because we have a lot more of the Joan Hamburg Show.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone, to the Joan Hamburg Show. And I finished reading Huma Abedin's book. Believe me, it wasn't hard. I don't even want to tell her that she made me stay up till 1:45 the other night to finish. And I had started reading it, and then I kept reading. You can't stop. You can't put down Both and A Life in Many Worlds, Huma's brand new book. And it's her memoir. And not only is it about a time that seems forever ago, but seems so important to us, almost 20 years, maybe more, public service with Hillary Clinton. The book talks about Huma's family and what it was like to grow up with a foot in many different worlds. It talks about her time as chief of staff at the Department of State. It talks about her marriage, her relationship to former Congressman Anthony Weiner, about her kid. But no matter what it talks about, you finish this book with a sense of possibility, of hope, and how important, no matter what your situation is in life, never give up. Go through it, make it work for you, and try to understand without knocking yourself down. And I thought it was a brave, incredible, and certainly time-consuming thing to do, to write a memoir like this. And I know that you probably locked yourself up for months at a time. I don't know how you did it.
Well, first of all, Joan, I'm so thrilled to be talking to you, and thank you for everything you said about my memoir, my story, my journey. I loved writing about it. Actually, writing it was therapy. I would lock myself away at friends' houses or at home and would go back and forth, taking a break and writing because, it was a big journey. And as you described, I cover a lot of different aspects of my life, my professional life, my marriage, my early family history. And I really wanted to do all of it justice, my parents, my boss, and really for my son. Because in the end, this book is really for him. It's for my father and my son is how I best describe it. And all the women in my family, the matriarchs in my family, my grandmother, who's the reason I am where I am today, this really bold, ambitious young woman.
And from your grandmother, who ahead of her time was filled with ambition. Going to school was a major undertaking, and she did.
That's exactly right. An 8-year-old in 1910, a little girl in India at a time when little girls were not sent to school to be educated. And, I think about her a lot. And it's this notion of what was it in her as an 8-year-old girl that just gave her the idea, the intuition, the feeling that she needed to go to school and be educated. And she was. And every time I've gone on a trip or been on Air Force One or traveled to all these incredible spaces and places or been in meetings and been on these incredible campaigns, I really is a testament to the commitment she had to improve her own life, and as a result, the life of her daughter, her children, and grandchildren. And I'm a direct, result of that.
Right, but isn't it when you think back, especially after writing a book like this that covers everything from childhood to your amazing family and the loss of your dad much too young, and having to deal with that, what a coincidence things are that as a kid, 21 years old, to apply as a college intern at the White House. I mean, how does that happen? And the thing is, most people would say, oh, I don't have a shot. And, nice thought, and let it go. Yeah. But you carried it through, and to your shock, you got the job, which was the beginning of your journey.
Joan, I spend a lot of time, which I've really enjoyed doing this, talking to students and traveling around the country, talking to students about their plans and their ambitions. And I always tell them, that was a lark. I wasn't sure I would get the internship. I had a friend who was interning at the White House. I was going into my senior year at George Washington University. I was studying to be a journalist. My ambition was to be Christiane Amanpour. I thought I had a clear path laid ahead of me. And this was sort of presented to me. It was really a gift in a way, a suggestion from a friend who said, why not apply for the internship? And I did it with low expectations, but I did it, and got it. And the minute I walked in to the White House in September 1996, when Bill Clinton was president and Hillary Clinton was a, barrier-breaking first lady, and it was, I just fell into, it became an addiction. It was sort of I fell in love with public service, with the work in government, the feeling that you could do so much to help people. It was an incredible, extraordinary journey that started that fall.
And the fact that you ended up working for Hillary Clinton, who, even though in the beginning you said, I didn't know what to do, nor should you or could you have that time, but she was there caring about you and whomever else was in her circle. And, to this day, we mourn that crazy election because we need her and people like you in the political world more than ever.
One of the things that, I've spent a lot of time talking to people who say, what would you do something differently? Could you, if you had gone back? I mean, the notion of not having that ability to walk into Hillary land, which is what we call the environment of, anyone who's been in either in her office or in her environment, it becomes a member of this club where really it comes from the top down. This idea that she believes that the way we all get better is to have smarter people at the table. There's always more space at the table when you work for Hillary. And I, as you mentioned, I was 21. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that women who I worked with said was, you really, so much of what you do in life is just judgment. It's just you either, and making decisions and having the confidence in yourself and your capacity to succeed, even when you are scared. And I still do spend a lot of my professional life uncertain. And am I going to be good at this? And am I going to be good at that? The first interview I did was 2 months ago. It was the first time I spoke really publicly. And I was terrified. But I know that Hillary believed I could do it. She's always had that kind of, she has our back, those of us who work for her and work with her. And as you noted at the beginning of your question, I do think it was an extraordinary loss for our country that she was not elected president in 2016. There was nobody more qualified, smarter, better prepared than her. She is a problem solver by nature. That is how she operates. And, I'm privileged to have had this last quarter century of time working with her.
So do you think that Hillary Clinton is going to be politically active again? We've got midterms. Will she appear with candidates? Does she have any ambition? She always has ambition, but the kind that she can really use. This is such a crazy time in American politics and in American life.
It does feel like a crazy time in American politics and American life. I think the pandemic, this global pandemic, has threw everyone for a loop, and the world that any of us anticipated we'd be living in a post-2020 world. It's just not, it just isn't, we were talking about this earlier, just New York, I live in Manhattan, and it just still doesn't feel the same as it felt pre-2019. I think Hillary is on the record as saying she will always be engaged and involved in public service. She will certainly help in ways that she can help in the midterms. She's already been doing a few things for candidates, and she'll continue to do that. And whatever this administration needs to, in terms of support from her, she's only a phone call away. And I'm glad that she's been engaged privately. People calling her for advice, and it is going to be all hands on deck. The midterms will be hard. The midterms are always hard for any party. And harder than ever. I agree. And every campaign, I mean, the way I was raised in politics is you run every campaign as though you're losing. And that's just the way to do it. And that's how she ran in 2000. And she won some elections and she's lost them, as the entire world, I think, knows. But anyone who's running in the midterms is going to have to approach it that way. And I think we're all clear-eyed, at least those of us in the Democratic Party, that it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And but we can either complain and say it's going to be really hard, what do we do, or just get to work and
do it.
Just get our message out and do it, and get voters energized. I mean, it's been an exhausting time, and emotionally, mentally, and so how do we get people engaged? How do we get people excited? How do we get people energized to come to the polls? And that's going to be work.
Yeah, it's going to be work, and we need Hillary Clinton or a Hillary whatever out there to get people all excited again, like the virus, which we're so sick of. We're so sick of these people we elected. Like, what happened to them? It's like they got elected and suddenly worse than we can imagine. And it's not just the other party, it's both parties who have not behaved.
Well, this administration certainly, inherited.
They're trying.
It is. There was such, this is obviously my personal opinion, but the mess that they inherited. Joe Biden had his job cut out for him, and they are out there every single day doing the best they know how. And here's the thing: the one thing I do know, as somebody who's been in politics or was in politics for 25 years, is many of these people in the administration are people I have worked with. I worked with them in the Clinton White House. I worked with them in the Obama administration. These are qualified people. They know what they're doing. They're true patriots, and they've got a lot of incoming. And so every day, it's easy to criticize when you're on the outside. I've been on the inside, too. And so to know that there are decisions that they're making that are complicated, I get it. I know it's not easy. I don't envy them. I don't envy anybody who has a job in Washington. But I obviously will support the work that they're doing, and I think they're gonna figure it out. When I have confidence that it's we have a president who knows what he's doing, and he's doing it at his own pace and his own way, and we just have to I have faith, but it doesn't mean that it's not been a hard time.
No, I agree with you, and he has done a lot of very important things. The problem is we're used to yellow screamers, assertive, and he comes across as very low-key and very quiet. So we have to send him to the radio school of speech making so that it's in your face and it's happening now. And that's sort of part of the problem. But let's go back to you. Today we're celebrating Huma's new book, her memoir, and it's both/and. It's the story of her coming of age and what happened thereafter, and what it's like to grow up in many different worlds. And interesting that you and your siblings, even though you were brought up in, as I said, several different cultures, you really identify with being American. I would say that's true of all of you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I was born in Michigan. I have immigrant parents, Indian father, Pakistani mother. They were both Fulbright scholars. Met at the University of Pennsylvania, and they did. They were grateful to have received, a waiver to stay in this country because They came from two different countries and countries that were in conflict with each other. It was not so long after the partition of India into East and West Pakistan. So they couldn't go back to their respective homes. This country welcomed them. They were always grateful for that. I was born in Michigan. And then when I was 2, my father was given essentially a terminal diagnosis of renal failure and told he had 5 to 10 years. And so they went on this adventure. I'm so grateful to my parents that they took us. We moved to Saudi Arabia, and then every summer, they were both academics. We had the summers off, and we would travel all over the world. And sometimes I feel bad. My son will come to me and he'll show me something that he's found on his iPad about tsunamis in Asia. And I think, oh my God, when I was his age, I was walking down the streets of Jakarta and Tokyo and Shanghai. And I mean, we were out in the world. I mean, we did have that gift. And I think it gave me a different perspective, certainly from people around me when I was both at the university and at the White House. And I hope we can refine that in a world where things seem to be so much more either or these days. That's why the book is called Both And, that we have to stay true to our own principles and values and identity. I mean, everywhere we traveled as Americans. And I think my parents, decided that for us because they determined that it was the identity that would give us the most freedom to explore our individuality, our confidence, our capacity and belief to do anything. Doesn't mean this country's perfect. I think they knew that. But it's certainly the ideals and principles that, it represented to be an American. That's something in the world. And back in the 1990s, we were the sole superpower in the world. It was a different time. But, boy, were we lucky to have lived that kind of a life. And, I want to be able to gift my son some of that as he gets older, too.
So now that the book is out and you've had time to talk about it and digest it, and it's like the best shrink in the world, right? When you see your life laid out in front of you. Was that book healing for you? I mean, not that, everyone needs a little healing, but did the book make you come to terms with everything and now have all the energy and strength to go forward, whatever path?
Oh, Joan, it's almost like you've been in my head for the last few days. It was the greatest therapy, just putting it all, first of all, on the page and having had to have processed it because, I got from a very low place and a very, very low place. And I think one of the reasons the book has actually connected, I'm very grateful for this with some people, and particularly during the pandemic, is that mental health in particular has become increasingly a topic that's less taboo. I mean, there was a lot of pressure for me to write this book earlier, right after the 2016 campaign, or maybe even after the 2008 campaign, or right after my marriage fell apart in 2011. But I needed to do the work. I had to go get professional help. I went to go and see a qualified therapist to help, me work through that process. I wrote the book. The book came out, and then just talking about it felt amazing. And every time I get a text message or a message on Instagram or Twitter, I didn't used to be on social media. I have been for the book tour. When I read these messages, I cannot even tell you, it brings me to tears when I hear other people's stories in America, but also around the world, of having to deal with something really, really hard and not sure they could get to the other side. It doesn't mean my healing is complete by any means. I mean, I think I'll be working on myself for the rest of my life. And in fact, I was just in Paris for a work trip, and I, just got some bad news, and I found myself like getting back to that place where I was just really sad. Right. And so, no, it's not, I've done and I've moved on. It's constantly doing the work and looking on the bright side and believing in hope. And isn't that what resilience is? You get up every single day and think, okay, today's going to be better than yesterday, because yesterday was pretty horrible. I've had a lot of horrible yesterdays. I've had a lot of phenomenal yesterdays. And I think what I've accepted, and maybe today's the day I needed to be talking to you about this, is that there will still be bad days. It's not going to be perfect, but right. I am going to believe that there will be more good days than bad days, and I'm glad to be able to share that with people.
And you also had a problem which a lot of people don't have. You were going through literally the worst in public, and yet you had your job, which was 24/7. So you couldn't take the bad, the sad, the angry, the humiliated on that stage. You had to go do your job no matter what. And you did. So you couldn't really grieve the way one has to grieve to deal with it. So the book really served a very important purpose, not only a gift for your child to know about the family, beside the other stuff and the history and all the things that makes one proud.
Absolutely.
But it gave you an opportunity, too, to heal as much as one can heal from trauma and stress.
Yeah, exactly right. And, part of it is, and I write this in the book, that I had gotten very good at compartmentalizing. So I could have these really awful, horrible personal experiences and conversations. And then we were getting up the next day. It's why the section in the book about the State Department, which is, where I worked when everything fell apart, I share the stories. I mean, we were traveling around the world. I mean, she was going to strategic dialogues in China, and I was working on that. We were traveling to Africa that week for some important diplomatic efforts. So it was very easy for me at the time sort of turn off the switch of my heart is broken, because we had, really important things to do. And I share a story in the book about, feeling in conflict about my marriage. And we had landed, I was walking with a good friend and colleague, Philippe Reines, and we had landed in Haiti because there had just been this earthquake, and thinking to Philippe, I'm having some trouble in my personal life. And then looking around me and saying, what is wrong with me? I mean, I have such extraordinary privilege. I have a man, exactly, who loves me, and I have all this uncertainty, and look at this devastation. People have lost everything. What is wrong with me? So it was this constant reminder that no matter what, and even today I have that even on days I feel bad, I know there is somebody who has it worse than I have it, by far. And it helped me get through it then. And it continues. It's a good reminder to have now. I don't think we should ever feel settled in who we are, what we're doing. I think we should always be working on ourselves.
No, we can't. And that's part of the problem of the pandemic was, the nothingness for so many people, not willingly, but part of this whole thing. We have to learn to step over it now and energize ourselves and get involved in the world again, and especially the political world. It's urgent that we all understand that we have a responsibility. And speaking of that, have you given thought or had time to give thought to what the next phase will be, or are you letting it happen?
I thought the short answer is I think I'm now actively really trying to figure out what it is I want to do when I grow up. I think Hillary Clinton's always going to be part of my life. I will always, be there to support her in any way that she needs the support. But I do think at 46, trying to figure out what my next adventure is going to be. Maybe it'll come to me, but I think more than likely, I think I have to start getting up and dusting off my resume and doing something about it. And I'm hoping to do that actually in the coming weeks.
And I know people have talked about you running for office and things like that. And, basically you were referred to as a quiet person, always making important decisions and things. But in the book, you yell loud and clear. So maybe all the things you thought you couldn't do about running for office, maybe you can do.
Yeah, maybe. I don't see myself running for office because and this has taken me some years to get to. It's not that I don't think I'd be good. I do think I'd be good. And I think the Huma even of a year ago would have said, I have no idea, I'm not sure. I just know what it takes. I know what it takes to run for office. I know the the commitment, the sacrifice, I'd have to make in terms of my family, my son especially. And it's hard out there, and it's only gotten worse. And I have certainly lived in the cauldron of the nastiness.
Right. The worst.
The worst of the worst. So it's not that appealing to me in the moment. But who knows? Maybe I will one day. I don't see it in my cards at the moment.
Okay, but you certainly didn't see being chief of staff of Hillary Clinton either.
No.
When you were trying to figure out who I am and what I want to be.
No, you're right. Actually, Joan, somebody said this to me the other day when they had read the book, and they said, it's really interesting. You never advocated for yourself. You just took whatever you were given.
Right,
and I
made it
thought,
work.
Exactly. And that really was an aha moment. It was just an interview I did recently, and I thought, you're 100%. I didn't think about it the entire time I wrote the book. But it is absolutely right, and maybe this is a female thing, or maybe this is just a me thing, or maybe this is a thing about women who were born in the 70s. I just took whatever was given to me, and I think now I need to shift and say I want or I can do this, and I intend to do that. What it is, I haven't figured that out yet, but maybe you'll have me back on, and by then I'll have figured it out.
Absolutely. But you know what? It's like women have learned, no matter what culture we're from, how to be the best little girl in many cases. Don't complain. Even your beloved father was what he learned to take what was given and made it something extraordinary. So you watch and you do that. But now that you've mastered that, now it's time to go on and say, hey, beat the drum, pound your chest, and go for it. And your kid will get it because he's grown up in it and he understands.
Right. Yes. And I want him to, I talk a lot about in the book about how hard it is for women in politics, certainly how hard it was for Hillary and what we had to go through, what I had to go through as a Muslim woman of color in politics. So that, it's not very many of me around. And the hate and the vitriol that we had to deal with. And so I want to raise a 10-year-old boy who learns not just to respect women, but not to fear our power. Because I think so much of it is about, how are we raising the next generation? When I was younger and when I was a young woman and what I believe was a cliche when Jackie Kennedy did an interview and she said the most important thing we can do is to raise our children right. That's the most important thing. And I thought, I rolled my eyes a little bit. Didn't have kids, couldn't really appreciate it. But really 100% of it is correct. I mean, you think about some of the actions and the activities that we have experienced in the last couple of years, particularly as it relates to some, behavior, and that includes my ex. What is it about, how we raise our children so that they feel loved and supported and confident and that it's okay to talk about their feelings? I was raised in a culture where you didn't really talk about your feelings. My mother resisted ever talking to a therapist, even though our whole family was going through the trauma of potentially losing my father. I don't talk to my son that way. I encourage him to talk about his feelings and to allow himself to, experience that. And I think it's just so important to do that for our children.
Without question. It's funny. I did the same thing so many years ago. My parents always was, fa la la, everything's great. Don't tell the kids anything bad or how you feel or how you're hurt. And so my poor kids, they heard everything until they were yelling, enough already. Don't share so much.
I think I'm on that path. I think Jordan's going to be like that too. Enough, Mom.
Right. Mom, I'm sorry. Quiet. That's it. And then you're going to have to say, I used to be quiet, but that's over. Anyway, there's so much more in the book that we have to talk about. So you're going to come and visit me again. The memoir is called Both and A Life in Many Worlds, and it's more important than ever to read it with what's going on in the world and go on this incredible journey. And as we say, only in America, the good, the bad, but never-ending opportunities. So here's to the future, Huma. Come visit me again.
I look forward to it. I've so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for having me. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, so thrilled to be on your show.
I'm grateful. Thanks, and say hello to the one and only Mrs. Clinton. We'll do this again. I promise all of you. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Well, I just finished watching Lisa Ling's series for HBO Max, Takeout with Lisa Ling. And you are going to love it, all of you out there. And Lisa explains that this show was actually sold before the COVID pandemic. And we all know the Asian community, everyone's had a hard time, but the Asian community has really been hard hit during this pandemic. So I thought, what a perfect time for Lisa to come out with this series of 6, taking us with her all across America, all different locations, and talking about the history of various Asian American communities and sampling the wonderful food all over and how different it is. And I don't know how Lisa even picked for 6 episodes the various communities, because there are so many. But Lisa, tell me, how did this idea hit you when you were thinking of new projects you wanted to do?
Well, first of all, Joan, it's so great to talk to you again. It's been so many years, and I love hearing your voice. This project, this show, Takeout, really, honestly, wasn't even a dream, because I never even dreamt that it could be possible to produce a mainstream television show about the Asian American experience and about Asian American food. And the reason is because Asian American stories just haven't been told in popular culture, and it certainly hasn't been a part of American history education at all. I mean, growing up as an Asian American, I never learned a thing about the Asian American experience in this country and the contributions that Asian Americans have made. And so, in some ways, when you don't have access to your own history, and everything that you see in pop culture is almost like a joke, right? You're a peripheral character.
Yeah, of course, caricatures.
It's hard not to feel like you don't belong, that you exist somehow on the outside. And so in the wake of COVID, HBO Max greenlit this show, and I had pitched, along with the production company that I work with, probably about 8 different ideas. And this is the one that I thought, there's no way they're going to greenlight this. I can't imagine anyone wants to really know about Asian American stories. And this is the one they approved. And so this journey, Joan, has just been so incredible for me, because I am learning so much about my own community, things that I never learned about in school, through the lens of something that most Americans have come to love, and that's Asian food. It's interesting.
It's everywhere.
Asians have dealt with so much discrimination and heartbreak in this country, but yet somehow Asian food has been able to transcend discrimination, transcend cultural differences, transcend gender. People just seem to really love it. And so I thought, or my team and I thought, it was the perfect vehicle to acquaint ourselves better with Asian American stories.
But I'm curious, when you were a child growing up, and your grandparents had had a Chinese restaurant. That was very important in the family history. But did your parents not share history, or did they not cook Asian food at home? My Chinese friends and Korean friends, they said they had it almost force-fed to them and resented it. And like you pointed out, were ashamed. They wanted to assimilate, to be part of the group. They didn't want to stand out.
So my grandmother did cook Chinese food in our home, but she did not cook the food that they served in the restaurant, because in the restaurant, it was catered to an American palate. Mm-hmm. They didn't even have chopsticks in the restaurant for their customers. But she did cook Chinese food for me growing up. But because I carried so much shame around my identity and the food, I mean, Chinese food sticks to you. You know, the smell it penetrates your clothing. And so all I wanted to do was just like assimilate and eat hamburgers and pizza. You know, when I never wanted to have friends come over because my house always smelled like Chinese food. And my grandmother, even though she spoke perfect British English, whenever I had friends around, she would speak to me in loud Cantonese. And so, you know, when you're in middle school and high school, all you want to do is fit in. Conform. You just don't want any reason to be different. And so that's why so many years later, decades later, it's amazing to me and an honor to be able to tell these stories. I mean, my 10-year-old self would never believe that I would one day, you know, be making this show for a mainstream audience.
Right. And then fully understand the sacrifices that so many in the Asian community made to be part of America and part of the American dream. I love seeing your little girls feasting on the Chinese food and so excited and so proud to be part of that community.
And you know what's funny, Joan, is that they request noodles and dumplings to take to school for lunch with little seaweed packets and little Chinese biscuits. If they could, they would take kimchi with them, but I won't let them because it smells too pungent and strong.
No, kimchi is very strong for the cafeteria.
It is. But I wouldn't have been caught dead bringing any of those foods to school because I know that I would have been made fun of and people would have thought that I was weird. Right. And so we have come such a long way, and I'm so excited that my kids are growing up in a world that's more tolerant, at least when it comes to kids. Right. You know, as far as the Asian hate that has been, you know, perpetrated over the last few years, those are really difficult conversations for me to have with my kids, you know, because they don't understand. Why would anyone want to attack people just because they have Asian faces? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when you don't have a frame of reference of a community's inclusion, you know, when your stories are not told in the history books, then it becomes easy to overlook and even dehumanize an entire community.
Right. But you point out that even you, in a very well-educated Asian family, didn't really know the history. It wasn't part of the family conversation, and it certainly wasn't part of school. But how did you land for 6 episodes on these different communities? Like, now you made me want to go back to the East Village to eat Bangladeshi food. You know, we all, let's go have Indian food. But, you know, who knew that there are different worlds within the world? Where did these communities come from?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Bangladeshi community because it's one of the fastest Asian groups in New York City. And Bangladeshis have always been in New York, but when they emigrated here, when they came to this country, because there was already an appetite for Indian food, so many of them opened Indian restaurants rather than Bangladeshi food. And I think that's very common. You know, recent immigrants from Asia, they just so want to assimilate that they will seek out whatever is already settled, right? And so many, for example, there are all these South Asians who have recently immigrated, and they open Thai restaurants, or they might open Chinese restaurants rather than restaurants from their own home countries.
And this food, by the way, it looked absolutely delicious. You made me literally want to go there.
Oh, Joan, I mean, I've traveled the world, and I had never had Bangladeshi food until I started working on this show. And there are some amazing Bangladeshi restaurants in New York. The one that I ate at Karai Kitchen in Jackson Heights is incredible. And they import the fish directly from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is known as the country of rivers. That fish that I had with that very pungent shrimp fish paste.
Yeah, you liked it, actually.
I loved it. They were shocked. It's called shukti. I loved it, but I'm a pretty adventurous eater.
But anyway, I didn't know that the first Asians to be in America were the Filipino community. And we're all going to be educated, not only on the Filipinos, but Vietnamese and Korean, and how they jump ship, basically, many of them, to make their way to this country.
That's right. The first Asians to settle in America came before the United States was even the United States, and they were Filipino ship jumpers. They were working on Spanish galleon ships, and they were either sailors or indentured servants, and hundreds of them jumped ship and didn't settle on the East Coast or the West Coast. They settled in the bayous of Louisiana, and they really built lives for themselves. Yeah. And because it was a big group of men, they ended up intermarrying and having kids. And so when you go to towns now like Jean Lafitte, Louisiana, the mayor there will tell you that he believes 70 to 80% of the population of his town has Filipino blood running through it. Like, that's how prolific those Filipino sailors were.
But Lisa, I'm talking to Lisa Ling, who's got her new 6-part series called Takeout with Lisa Ling, which is on HBO Max. How did the Korean community get to Virginia?
Well, they, I think after the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, that's when the biggest wave of Koreans came to the United States. And there was already a community in the Washington, D.C. area. And so many of those people in Washington sponsored people from Korea to come to the United States, and they ended up settling in that region. And it's interesting because that legislation, it really sort of required you to have some skills or be educated in order to be able to immigrate to the United States. And so that Korean diaspora is a very different one than, for example, the early Chinese who came here, and worked almost as indentured servants on the railroad and in so many different areas doing labor work.
And when you finished this, did your family see it?
Oh, yeah.
And what did they think?
My family they loved it, and they also are like, wow, it's amazing that you've gotten an opportunity to tell these stories. And one of the things that excites me the most is, I think for so long, the Asian American community, it was very segregated. Chinese people would, become part of Chinese organizations or affiliate more with Chinese people. Koreans would do the same. And, Cambodians would hang out with Cambodians. And the last couple of years, I think it's become glaringly apparent that, those who perpetrate attacks on Asians don't discriminate between those who are Filipino and those who are Chinese.
Right.
And that the Asian American community is, in and of itself, its own distinctive community. My husband is Korean American. I'm Chinese American. But he and I have more in common with each other as Americans than he has with people from Korea and I have with people from China. We are kind of this unique, distinctive category. And I think that a lot of Asian Americans are really starting to recognize that and take pride. And so I felt a kind of ownership in all of the stories in this series. I mean, these were stories of my community. And at the end of the day, Joan, these are American stories because the immigrant story is the American story.
Right. And did your husband, who is Korean, did he grow up like you, as he wanted to be an American, number one? Was he from a traditional family?
Oh, he and I, he's a little bit older than me, but we're of the same generation. And he kind of jokes because he missed the big Korean pop culture wave that is taking the world by storm right now. I mean, Korean pop culture is the most popular on earth, and the biggest band in the world is BTS, a Korean band. But yeah, when he was growing up in Short Hills, New Jersey, and then, when he ended up moving to the sort of DC metro area, he still dealt with a lot of prejudice and discrimination. And he got into fights all the time growing up when people would tease him and bully him about his ethnicity. I mean, fortunately, he's a giant man. He's 6'4", so he was usually victorious in the fights. But nevertheless, it was a pretty regular thing.
Where did you meet him? Did you meet him in Washington?
We did meet in Washington. He was practicing medicine there, and I was working for National Geographic. And
your paths just crossed.
Well, a mutual friend of ours connected us. Yeah, and he's a very good cook.
Well, I
and
noticed
he really enjoys it. In fact, he's annoyed that I got a cooking show. He didn't.
Well,
he loves to cook.
But it's a food show. I mean, it's an everything show. It's about history. It's about people. It's about hearing their lives and their stories. And I loved the episode when you went back to where the family's roots were. And had you done that before?
No, Joan, this was the first time. And that's why this experience has been so special for me. I mean, and I think that, all of the attacks on Asians over the last couple of years have really forced our community to kind of look back into the roots. A lot of people have been surprised that these attacks have become so rampant. But when you really stop and dig into the history, Asian Americans have been on the receiving end of attacks and discrimination for over a century. And so working on this series really compelled me to look into a lot of these stories. And as someone who carried so much shame growing up in Carmichael, California, outside of Sacramento, when I took the time to understand the sacrifices of so many of those Chinese immigrants who toiled in, on the railroad, in restaurants, in the fields, building the levees, and then how they were chased out of their communities, how their towns were burnt to the ground, how they were lynched. It just made me feel so ashamed that I felt shame about being Chinese American, and it made me so appreciate the sacrifices that those early Chinese immigrants made so that I could, do this show one day, so that I could, be able to do and work in the fields that I work in, I don't know that I would be able to be doing these things if it weren't for those early sacrifices of those who came before me.
Right. I'm talking to Lisa Ling, whose new HBO Max show is called Takeout, and it's not only about food, but it's through food and the commonality that we really explore the history of many of these groups, from Vietnamese to Korean to Japanese. You hear these heartbreaking Japanese stories about being sent to the camps. I mean, you've really done a good job, Lisa, and thank you for it. And Happy New Year. Does your family celebrate the Chinese New Year?
Oh, yeah. We had a big hot pot dinner, and my little girls were given the red packets with some cash, and they bowed to their the elders. And we made our wishes. So yeah, we had a really nice Lunar New Year. And Joan, I so appreciate you taking the time to watch this series, and I always love talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lisa. All the best to you, and I hope it is a Happy New Year for one and all. We'll talk again. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm Joan Hamburg. Don't forget, go to HBO Max. There it is. And you and I are going to take a break. You're listening to WABC Radio, and a lot more ahead. Stay tuned.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Okay, guys, I'm looking at the clock, and we don't have a lot of time left. But, of course, you're all getting ready. Tonight is the big game. And I can't guarantee what percentage of Americans are going to be tuned in, but I'm sure it's very high. And tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I couldn't believe that we all spend billions of dollars on Valentine's Day presents and gifts. And speaking of that, for those of you who wait last minute or who never know what kind of gifts to give anyone, my friend Jody and I decided last week, it was a Sunday and a beautiful, cold day, but a beautiful day, that we were going to go on a little adventure. So we went to Brooklyn to visit one of our favorite stores at 1308 Avenue M, the Yellow Door. And it was owned for so many years by the Bijou family, still run by the family and son-in-law Johnny. The store looked gorgeous. It was so crowded, and they had such fabulous gifts. By the way, they also have a Yellow Door in Lakewood at the Seagull Square Shopping Plaza on River Avenue. And when the weather really gets warm, summery, they have a pop-up store in Deal, New Jersey. Go to theyellowdoor.com. But they had such great gifts, and I'm going to give you an idea. They had, on the high end, a ruby, beautiful ruby stone set in sterling silver. They had a whole thing, so pretty, and it was reduced from $149 to $99. And then they had something that the shoppers were like going crazy, baccarat butterflies that were really pretty, and they were about $140, and they had a lovely necklace. They called it a fun and flirty heart necklace, and that was $18. A perfect gift. There were a lot of teens who were oohing and eyeing over it. And then they had a Mackenzie Childs check little to-go tote. Really attractive. And again, very inexpensive for that. Like $22, $23. A paperclip locket necklace that was reduced to, I think it was $18. Trust me, they had so many gifts, we wanted to buy out the whole store. And, of course, I bought myself, I couldn't resist, earrings. And my friend Jody bought herself hoop earrings. We just shopped away. And it was so much fun to shop there. And then later we took ourselves to a Syrian delicacy place where we bought all kinds of great food. I'll tell you about that another time. But for any gifts, and there was an engagement party held upstairs in the store. Let me give you the phone number to order anything, and you don't even have to go. They can help you over the phone for whatever occasion. 718-998-7382. That's the Yellow Door, 718-998-7382. Ask for Johnny, and I promise you're going to be happy and excited, and they have the best prices. We were just delighted. We had such a good time. Anyway, guys, we're coming up to 3 o'clock, and I know you have to get ready. More people are talking about what they're going to eat than who's going to win. But it's okay. It's all part of the Super Bowl. We love the commercials. We love the food. I don't love football so much, but I've adjusted over the years. Enjoy the rest of the day. And happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. Enjoy the big game. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC Radio. More ahead.